Bishop, you decried the use of generalities in describing the immigrant population right before you then used a generality of 12 million. You repeated the same talking point straight out of the DNC, 12 million aspiring citizens. I'm assuming that you are not counting the killer of Miss Wilkerson's son in that 12 million.
I'm not understanding your question.
Well, you said there's 12 million aspiring Americans here, and my point is all 12 million aren't aspiring, and all 12 million couldn't pass any background check, even one by the ACLU or a criminal defense attorney. Surely you're not including the person that killed her son in the 12 million aspiring Americans.
I'm not sure that I used the term aspiring.
You said 12 million. You spoke as if the entire population is deserving of citizenship. That's precisely what you said.
I do believe that the 12 million who are here need to be considered for a pathway to
How about the one that killed her son?
Citizenship.
How about the one that killed her son?
It's a criminal. I hope he's been dealt with as a criminal.
So it's 12 million minus one. How about the one that killed?
Community.
It's 12 million minus one. How about the one that killed Miss Root's daughter?
That's a criminal case.
All right, so that's 12 million minus
immigration
2.
Policy.
How about the gang members in Sheriff Jenkins' jurisdiction?
If we're talking about safety in our communities, then let's
talk
about safety
the gang members in Sheriff Jenkins' jurisdiction? Are those part of the 12 million with which you made reference?
I do not know. What I do
you don't know whether or not a gang member
know,
should be included on a path to citizenship?
What I do know is that our communities deserve greater safety, and it's not going to happen when we pit
I just respectfully
victims.
disagree with you, Bishop. American citizens should not be victimized by crime. I think we can agree with that. And American citizens should not have to wait until someone who is not here legally commits another crime before we decide to get serious about enforcing our immigration laws. So my question to you is this. Of the 12 million, if that number is right, minusing the one that killed Miss Wilkerson's son, minus the one that killed Miss Root's daughter, minus the gang members, minus the 300,000 that have already been adjudicated to have committed another criminal offense, how would you go about identifying the good ones from the bad ones?
The way we identify good ones from the bad ones every single day, by looking at their character, by seeing how they're
Well, how are we supposed to do that if we don't even know who they are, Bishop?
Well, we won't know who they are if we continue to treat them the way we're treating them.
No. There's a way to know. There's but you just said you don't like the way that we've chosen to do it. You don't want local law enforcement.
I do not think that is a helpful way.
Well, let me ask you this,
Immigrant
Bishop.
communities want to help. They want to
why
keep
don't
their community safe, but they won't come forward if they think that they're going to be picked up by us.
Oh, no,
it's going to threaten their lives.
We saw a perfect
going
example.
To be left behind.
It's going to be really tough for the court reporter if you continue to talk while I'm asking questions. She's got a tough enough job. So how about we just agree to go one at a time, okay? How about Kate Steinle's murder in San Francisco? That's a sanctuary city. You wrote an op-ed on it. Do you remember that?
I did.
And you advocated for policies that prevent gun violence. You remember writing that?
Yes.
We have some of those policies. In fact, we call them laws. There's a law against shooting someone on a pier who's walking beside her father. We already have that law. We already have a law where convicted felons can't purchase or possess firearms. Do you know that Kate Steinle's killer was a convicted felon?
Yes.
We also have a law that if you're not here legally, either overstayed a visa or cross the border without permission, that you cannot legally possess or purchase a firearm. Did you know that was already a law? So what policies are you advocating for that would have saved Kate Steinle's life in addition to the ones we already have?
That's a very tragic situation, but you cannot blame all immigrants.
I'm not. I'm just blaming the one that shot her.
For the action of one person.
No.
That's what you are doing.
Your approach is to wait until the murder and then do the deportation. And my approach is try to have as few body bags as we can possibly have. Try to identify those that are not aspiring citizens before they kill somebody's son or daughter in San Francisco. That's my objective, to identify them before the crime. So my question to you is, how are you going to do that?
I would argue that we need trust policies where immigrants, documented and undocumented, can come forth to report crimes and to report when they too have been victims of crimes without the fear of being deported. We need that kind of trust. Otherwise, these families will not come forth. Immigrants do not want gangs in this country or in their communities. Many
Listen,
of them are
you don't hear me
escaping those
talking in
gangs.
generalities, Bishop. That was you that did that. I made a point in my opening of saying that we shouldn't be talking in generalities. I do find it bitterly ironic that you are talking about trust among the immigrant community, and you don't even trust local law enforcement to enforce our immigration laws. I find that richly ironic. Why don't you trust local law enforcement to enforce our immigration laws?
I do not trust the procedures and policies under which we are expecting governance and policing to happen in our communities.
Bishop, you trust them in murder cases. You trust them in child sex abuse cases. You trust them in narcotics cases. You trust them in kidnapping cases. You trust them in traffic violation cases. You trust them in every category of crime, except you just don't want the sheriff enforcing immigration laws. And yet you want to talk about building trust with the law enforcement community, and you don't trust him to enforce immigration laws, even though you trust him to enforce every other category? And you want to talk about trust. Did I hear you right?
I want to talk about trust policies, yes.
Well, I want to talk about the law. I want to talk about the law. You said we're a nation of immigrants. That may be true. We're also a nation of laws. And the ability to pick and choose the ones that you want based on political expediency or your view of theology is going to undermine this republic very quickly. And as a result, we'll have more panels with more moms. With
laws of this country change when we realize that they're immoral or unjust.
Well, then you can run for Congress and change the law. But as it stands right now, we're going to enforce it. If you don't like the law, you can change it. But what you can't do is just selectively decide which ones you want to enforce and which ones you don't, because that's called anarchy.
Congressman, we have broken immigration policies. That's what needs to be addressed.
Okay. But you just sat there and listed all the laws that we passed to try to address it. You didn't like a single one of them. You didn't like the law. You didn't like the law empowering local law enforcement. You don't like the fact that we would deny federal funding to sanctuary cities that harbor people like the man who killed Kate Steinle. So it's not a question of passing laws, Bishop, with all due respect. It's a question of passing laws you like.
It's a question of passing laws that are just.
All right, and if there's anything more relative in the world than the word just, I don't know what it is. So rather than aspire to justice, I'm just going to aspire that we actually enforce the law, because that is the community's manifestation of justice. We take what we think about justice and mercy, and then we codify it in something we call the law. And by the way, Bishop, these aspiring citizens that you talk about, the 12 million minus 1, 2, God knows how many, in their oath of citizenship, there are a half dozen references to the law. A half dozen references to the law in the oath that we expect new citizens to take. I think it'd be a really neat idea if we actually enforced the law so that citizenship oath actually had a little bit of meaning, because right now it doesn't seem to.